Getting out in the community and trying to collect signatures so we can address what is obviously a mistake that's been made collectively by the voters of Los Angeles County. And that's okay, mistakes happen. Nobody is to blame, especially when Mr. Gascon implemented policies and directives that he didn't run on. He's claiming that he ran on these policies and directives and such, he has a mandate to implement them, but he didn't. And we all know he didn't because we paid attention to what he said and what he didn't say. What we got on December 7th when he was sworn in, and immediately after he was sworn in, was a different agenda, a much more radical agenda, the most radical agenda masquerading as criminal justice reform in the entire country. A lot of people voted for him after a long, hard summer for all of us. They voted for him without knowing much about him, but hoping and believing that he represented change for the better. A lot of people voted. You know, after a long, hard election, like the last election we had, you don't want to see any campaign ads anymore. You don't want to see any commercials. You don't even want to hear about it. And here we are, just eight or 9 months removed, feeling that we are in a crisis, and so we have no choice but to take the action that's been taken. But how do we get the rest of the public to understand what's happening? See, collecting signatures is only part of it. Before you can get the signatures, you have to educate the public about what's happening. And it's difficult because the criminal justice system isn't always intuitive, and it can be complex. And most people in LA County, even the most intelligent people, don't really understand and know how the criminal justice system functions. So they're left to rely on what they hear about it. We live in Los Angeles County, where right now our two largest newspapers, the entire Democratic Party, which is my party, by the way, almost every elected official has endorsed, stood by, or stood silent, while George Gascon has radically changed our approach to handling criminal cases. And that all redounds to his benefit, because the people who are in the best position to educate the public are not speaking up, right? So now we have to speak up. We have to educate the public. And it's not easy. It's not easy to explain to the public why it's important to allow some juveniles to be prosecuted in a criminal court. Now listen to what I said. I didn't say adult court. That's a misnomer that plays into the hands of the likes of George Gascon, because when people hear juvenile and adult, your brain automatically thinks if they're under 18, they should be here. If they're over 18, they should be there. The distinction is between a juvenile court or the juvenile system and a criminal court. You should never hear the word adult court. The reason we prosecute some 16 and 17-year-olds in a criminal court is not because we hate them.
It's not because we want to punish them. It's because we recognize that our juvenile system has limitations. It wasn't designed for hardcore antisocial crimes or criminals. And a very small percentage of our 16 and 17-year-olds fall into that category. They do not belong in a system that was never designed for them, can't help them, and can't help society. When we recognize that, we go before a juvenile court judge and we ask the judge to transfer them to a criminal court where they can be better dealt with. The public needs to understand that the district attorney does not decide whether a 16 or 17-year-old is prosecuted in a juvenile court or a criminal court. A juvenile court judge makes that decision. An independent, elected, accountable judge who is a dedicated juvenile court judge who hears the cases all the time, he makes the decision or she makes that decision, not us. But you have a district attorney who has a policy of usurping that power from the juvenile court judges because he will never put a 16 or 17-year-old, no matter what they do, in front of a juvenile court judge so the juvenile court judge can exercise his independent constitutional authority. That is a problem. That is an undermining of our criminal justice system. That is an egotistical district attorney who decides, I'm going to rig the system so that other justice partner members don't have an opportunity to do the job that the public elected them to do. That's how it should be described to the public when you explain to them the problem with what he's doing. The problem with what he's doing. And to make it concrete, you can take examples of juveniles who've committed atrocious crimes and say, hey, if that happened in LA, guess what? He's going to be out in 6 years, 7 years. Not rehabilitated, not held accountable, no justice for victims. That's the result of just one policy of District Attorney Gascon. The man came to this job untrained, inexperienced, a record of failure in San Francisco. He came to this job with the mayor of San Francisco writing an open letter to the people of Los Angeles saying, beware, don't do it. The chief of police of San Francisco wrote an open letter and said, please don't elect this man. He'll do to your city what he did to ours. He nearly lost in the primary. He's lucky Rachel Rossi was still in that primary run. Otherwise, she would have won it outright. But then George Floyd got killed by a cop in Minnesota. And that turned the world upside down. And one of the unfortunate consequences of that is we're now stuck with this man and his ideas. Now, let me offer a piece of advice to everyone. We don't need to call him names. We don't need to make it personal, because this is really about bad ideas. It's not about bad people, right? George Gascon view of the world and his policies make perfect sense to him. As much as they don't make sense to some of us, they make perfect sense to him. Okay? You're not going to change his mind. You're not going to change the BLM supporters who stood with him yesterday, because it makes perfect sense to them that if you don't punish violent criminals, that somehow they're going to learn a lesson and be wonderful after that. Right? And it doesn't matter to them that society is, at some point, victims are going to say, well, there's no justice in the criminal justice system, so I'm going to have to handle this on my own. We don't want that. That's real danger. It's a real possibility. There's not a whole lot holding this together except our confidence in one another, and that we buy into a system that we believe is fair to everybody. His ideas threaten that. And let me tell you something. You haven't even seen the impact of what he's doing. We won't see the impact of what he's doing for at least 4 or 5 years down the road when people who should still be incarcerated, undergoing rehabilitation, are back out on the streets. A little bit older, a little bit bolder, and still ready to go. And I'm talking about violent crime. This notion that we're locking up people for misdemeanors and drug offenses, it's not true, ladies and gentlemen, it's not true. 80% of the people in prison right now in California are serving a sentence for a serious or violent felony. And when I say serious or violent, that's by definition of the penal code, which is a very narrow definition. There are a lot of serious and violent crimes that our penal code doesn't recognize as serious and violent, okay? 80% of the population is serving a sentence right now for a violent felony. 90% have at least one serious violent felony in their background. So maybe what they did wasn't serious or violent, but they're being punished a little bit more because they just did something that was serious or violent. These are the people in prison. Don't let anybody convince you that the people in prison were randomly rounded up from the street because they were black or brown, or because they committed some minor offense, but the system is designed to punish black or brown people, so we put them in prison for virtually no reason at all. And then, of course, we know who the victims of these crimes are, right? The victims are invisible. Nobody talks about you, your loved ones. It's as if you don't matter. You know, his attitude is, I feel sorry for you, but get over it. We'll get you some counseling. I'm more concerned about this person who committed the crime. I want to heal him. So big problems. I was asked to come and talk about his impact on the office, and I don't want to dominate the mic too long. I went off on some other stuff. But, thank you. Hey, by the way, while I'm here, we have to acknowledge Juneteenth, right? June 19th, 1865, 250,000 men, women, and children held in bondage in Texas got word that they were free. Imagine that. Imagine living your whole life as a slave, and then one day some man named Gordon Granger shows up and says, y'all are free. You know what? The president actually freed you a couple years ago on January 1st, 1863, but Texas didn't tell you. Right? And by the way, we fought a war that ended in April. They surrendered, and Texas is still holding you in freedom. Holding you in bondage. Imagine hearing that. They must have thought, oh, this can't be real. But we're celebrating the jubilation and the celebration that they had once they accepted and heard that they were free. And a lot of them got up out of Texas after that. But what a wonderful thing for our country to commemorate that. Yes. Right? And what I hope is it's not just a celebration of the end of slavery, but it's a celebration of the people who endured slavery and in many ways overcame it, which is a story of black history that isn't often told. From 1865 to 1940, the incredible gains that African Americans made in a hostile environment where the government wasn't doing a damn thing for them. And yet they still cut the illiteracy rate by more than half. They had marriage rates higher than the white population. Their children were growing up in two-family households at rates higher than the white population. This is all true. It's not true today. 7 out of 10 of our kids are growing up in single-parent households. That's a problem. You want real criminal justice reform? You got to think about societal reform. We got to think about those kids from prenatal to 8 or 9 years old, because that's when antisocial behavior and patterns start to develop. We got to get them through that period. We can't wait until they become broken and then try to fix them. I'm not saying we give up on anybody, but it's much better to prevent the break from happening in the first place. And that's really where we should be thinking. And you know where we go a long way toward doing that? Safe homes, safe schools, and safe neighborhoods. Letting dangerous people back into black and brown neighborhoods do not make the neighborhoods safe places, and it threatens to expose children to a lot of negative behavior, attitudes, and role models. We can't have that. Now, I know there are people who are well-meaning who think we just need to empty our prisons. I listened to George Gascon yesterday outside the Hall of Justice. He was out there with his friends from BLM and Father Boyle and, all the usual suspects. Holly Mitchell, she came out. And he called himself a one-trick pony. He said that, quote unquote. He said, I was a one-trick pony. And it was the only true thing he said during his whole 20 minutes of speaking. He is a one-trick pony, and his one trick is decarceration. Decarceration. Now you see them, now you don't, because they're back in the black and brown neighborhoods. Now you see them, now you don't. He has no real interest in meaningful reform. Reform that will bring about abiding change for people who are on both sides of a crime, victims and perpetrators. Right? We need, our system is in constant state of reform. I mean, we get 30, 40, 50 new criminal laws every year. Things get deleted, things get added. We're constantly training and adjusting to changes in the law. But still, there are some things that we can do better, and I think he tapped into that. He just tapped into it with a lot of bad ideas that are not going to make things better for anybody. He eliminated, restructured, maybe is a better way of saying it, the hardcore gang unit. Los Angeles is the gang capital of the world. We got hundreds of gangs, hundreds of thousands of gang members. Gang crimes are on a rise. Homicides are on a rise, largely fueled by gang-related shootings. We have over 700 open gang cases that need to be prosecuted. It's at this time that he reduces the prosecutors who are trained to do this by 1/3. 1/3 fewer prosecutors to do gang crimes. And somehow that's a good policy? How is that a good policy for communities? Right? It's not. He has a parole policy. Jessica Corday is here with us today. Jessica Corday is the mother of a case that I prosecuted. Her son was beaten to death by 10 gang members in Pomona. They were literally stomped, kicked, stabbed, shot. A horrible, brutal death. We prosecuted as many people as we could. We prosecuted 10 people. 6 were convicted of murder. Others were convicted of aggravated assault. Well, for decades, the DAs from Garcetti all the way up to Jackie Lacey had a policy that DAs went to parole hearings. We go to parole hearings to represent the people. That's our job. Our job is not to go there to oppose parole. He tells people that, but that's a lie. A lot of times when a prosecutor can look at a case and say, oh, this guy's, he's going to get paroled. He deserves it. He served his time. He ran a good program. He's going to get out. That's fine. That's how we do it. The role of a prosecutor at a parole hearing is just to, first of all, be there for the people so there's transparency in what's going on. He is also able to tell the commissioners who are deciding the case what happened in the underlying crime. And Gascon says that's not necessary because they already know. That's a lie. They don't know. And maybe I shouldn't call it a lie because a lie assumes an intentional untruth. Maybe he just doesn't know because he has no experience. This man got his job without ever going to court. Your governor, then Mayor Gavin Newsom, said, hey, George, you want to get Did you get your law degree at 42? Where did you go to law school again? Okay, good enough. You passed the bar. You want to be DA of San Francisco? Can you imagine that happened? I've been a DA for 22 years. Nobody ever offered me a job like that. You know, I got 35 murder convictions. Nobody ever said to me, you want to be DA of someplace? This man never went to court. I'm telling you, he never looked at a jury. And the mayor said, here's a job, George. He became DA of San Francisco, and that's why he did such a bad job up there. But because he was DA up there, he came down here and said, I'm experienced. I was DA in San Francisco. People voted for him. He has no idea what prosecutors like me do on a day-to-day basis. No idea. And we're seeing that, and we're suffering through that. So, his gang policy is a problem. His parole hearing policy is a problem. Jessica Corday had to go to that parole hearing and basically represent herself by herself. And to prepare for it, she had to get all of the files, or she wanted to get all of the files, including the pictures of her dead son, which she had never seen before, because she wanted to be able to make that case that the killer didn't deserve parole. That's all unnecessary, because that's what our job is. That's what the taxpayers pay us for. We're trained to do that, to take that burden off of victims like you and your family members. And not only did she go to that parole hearing and have to endure that by herself, without any formal legal training, any idea like what goes on in a parole hearing, she had no access to his prison records, so she could point out things that he'd done in prison, which included beating another black man. The commissioners who heard the hearing saw no DA, knew no DA was watching, so what are they doing? One of them is eating a salad while she's testifying. They're congratulating him. They're consoling him. That wouldn't happen if a DA is in the room. People act differently when they're being watched, you know that. But that's another one of his brilliant ideas. What he thinks he gets out of that, I don't know. All it does is re-traumatize his victims. He has no sensitivity for victims. So those are some of the problems with him. The challenge for us is to educate people, to talk to them about the criminal justice system in a way that they understand the problems. Make it less personal, make it more about issues, and then you all have to have this mic, not me. I love the sheriff. I love the way he talks about these issues. He's one of the best spokesmen for these issues, but people don't want to hear it from the sheriff. They want to hear it from you. So thank you so much for allowing me this time, for listening to me. I'll be here with you if you have any questions or want to follow up on something I said or something I didn't say. I'm happy to talk to you. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, John. Amazing. Inspiring. Thank you. Thank you for standing for what's right, especially as a deputy DA in the LA County office.
Case Christian has 2 children, Sierra and Luke. They're 10 and 6. Little Luke doesn't know what's going on. He's happy to hold justice for Dad and tell me to vote and sign. And then there's Sierra, who I haven't seen since April 10th, because me, the baby mama, she has something against me. She's a co-victim. It's just one murder topples generations. There's nieces who will ask one day, oh, I had an uncle who was murdered in my family. Gascon talks about all this generational effect. Well, how about our generational effect? What's going to happen to our children when they grow up, and their children who will know, in my son's case, that their grandfather was murdered? It's going to affect them. So we need to educate ourselves on Gascon's directives. We need as much support to work the tables and go into the communities and knock on doors. And we need to recall and replace Gascon with a new district attorney. Yes. Okay? Yes. So let's do this.
Thank you so much, Melda, for your... Emma's been fighting, and she's a real fighter today. So, you know, her son, Chris, was violently murdered as well. So, you know, she will share the story now. Thank you so much, Emma.
Okay, one thing first, I want to thank God first in this journey that I'm walking with for a lot of people, not just for my son, for Imelda's son, for Jessica's son. I'm talking about future moms that are going to be out here wishing that they get justice for their murdered kids. Anyway, I remember meeting Imelda, the mom that you just met, on the petition to start the recall. The reason I joined this recall of George Gascon is due to the fact that my prosecutor also called me to tell me they were going to drop the gang enhancements. That was like a slap in the face. You're going to let a gang member not be charged as a gang member. Basically, a gang member killed my son. And that's 10 years on top of the murder charges, you guys. Just being a gang member and being caught as a gang member, that's 10 years on top of your sentence. That's another 10 years if you're a parolee with a gun. That's 20 years, you guys. When my prosecutor told me they were going to drop 20 years from the guy that murdered my son, I joined this Recall George Gascon effort. I know there's more people to keeping our sons in jail, but right now I'm focusing on the main criminal, Gascon. And let me tell you something, Gascon, if you happen to see this video later on, I did vote for your sorry ass. And you know what? I apologize to the Los Angeles County residents for my mistake for voting for this animal. I call him an animal because he has no pity at all for none of you. Gascon don't give a rat's ass for you. He don't care about you. Your safety is not important to Mr. Gascon. He can give a rat's ass if you are a victim to any crime, because he's going to give these criminals a little slap on the hand. And guess what? Mr. Gascon lives in a nice neighborhood. And let me tell you something. He don't give a damn about your safety. And I'm being very aggressive right now because I haven't even got justice for my murdered son. I've been going through trial for 5 years. 5 years, you guys, and I have not got justice for my murdered son, who was killed by a gang member. He shot two out of 3 sons, he shot 2. One survived, one died, and one witnessed a murder. And you're going to tell me that Gascon has any empathy towards me? Or any parent that loses a child, or your uncles, or nephews, or nieces? Let me tell you, Gascon's bad news, you guys. And John McKennick just told you he's not even qualified. He's never even done a case as a lawyer, you guys, and we voted for him. I know I did, and my biggest mistake was voting for you, Mr. Gascon. And no, I do not like you, Mr. Gascon. That's why I'm on this effort. Yeah, I'm calling you out. I've been in front of your office. I asked you to come down from the 12th floor to meet a real victim, and you have denied me access. I asked you to come down to meet me. You have not given me that opportunity to talk to a real victim. But you sure have a lot of balls to make up a group of made-up victims. Anyway, you guys, really, I have to apologize because I did vote for that guy. And I'm first to admit that I'm on this effort to recall him, and I'm praying to God we get rid of this monster. I don't know who can be okay with somebody that's okay with criminals. I don't know, you must be some sick person to be okay with his directives. I have no words for Mr. Gascon. The only thing I can tell you, Mr. Gascon, is step the fuck down. I don't work for you, Mr. Gascon.
Thanks for...
Wash your hands afterwards.
Check, yeah. And you know, Emma, I don't know if you stress this point enough, but the fact is, if these criminals, like her son's killer, is let out in the streets earlier than he should be, or just let out, period, that's her life and her son's life in danger. You want to say a few words?
I don't think it's fair that my son who was shot by this gang member have to live in fear. Because my son that was shot by that gang member did survive. My other son did die. So now I have to live with the fear of having my other son get killed by the guy that murdered my son. And how about my son that's an eyewitness to a murder has to live in fear because he will be let out when he reaches 50 because he did murder my son under 25. So I'm just letting you guys all know Mr. Cascone has no empathy for anyone that's a victim to any kind of crime. So if I was you, I would get more signatures out there, get people going on recalling this monster because he's a monster, you guys. Mr. Cascone is not qualified to be a DA. We need to get a DA that cares for the safety of Los Angeles. Just like Orange County, I admire Todd Spencer. I'm a big fan of yours in Orange County. You're a good DA, and I believe this will be our first time we ever recall a DA in Los Angeles. Right? This Cascone will be the first DA ever to be recalled. Anyway, I just want to make it one more time clear. I apologize that I did vote for you, Mr. Cascone. You need to go, and I'm not going to step away from this recall up to you are out.
That's right.
Thank you, Emma. God bless you, Emma. Yeah, he was clapping too, he agreed with your statements. And now I want to bring up, we heard from Jojo earlier, we are, hearing from the victims and what needs to be done, but also from other community groups like the church community. So, Bishop Mendez, we're so honored to have you. Thank you so much for being here.
And what a great honor to be here with you this afternoon and be able to breathe fresh air. We were locked up for 15 months, but the one we need to lock up is Gascon. He has been very harmful to the community.
Her sons were victims of hate crime, a real hate crime. So I want you to share, and I love your mask, by the way. So thank you for being here.
Okay, first of all, I'm a parent. I ain't really a politician, so I'm be talking about my baby. Gascon, how he affected it, but the most important thing to me is I'm a mom. Yeah. So I'm here because if I don't fight like a mom, ain't nobody else gonna do it for me. At the end of the day, my son was brutally murdered April the 17th, 2009 for being the only black at a party. He showed up at a party, he went with his white friend and he had a Latino friend. He found the party on MySpace and they showed up at the party and he was the only black, and a gang called the Mexican Tito Killers. They beat him up at the party, they surrounded him on the dance floor, they brutally beat him, then they chased him 100 yards. They rendered him unconscious with a 2x4. He had blunt force trauma to the head. He had made multiple fatal stab wounds, multiple non-fatal stab wounds, a gunshot wound to the head. They robbed him, disrobed him, and stole his shoes. We got 10 convictions. We originally had 14 arrests. It was 14 to 20 of them that murdered my son. We ended up getting 10 convictions. All of them were under the age of 26. Every single one of them were under the age of 26, which that means to the state of California that they're more important than my murdered son. You don't get to tell me how valuable my son is.
Yes.
I don't care who you are, what title the world gave you, because at the end of the day, God is all power. And if he gave me my son, he gave me a journey and he gave me a purpose. And I'm not going to sit up here and let the state of California, because I would drag everybody in the state of California over my kid. Because at the end of the day, when you tell me that his murderers can be set free because they were under the age of 26, my son was 18. He don't get parole. He's locked in that casket forever. But George Gascon, he is a problem, but he has a team. He has a system. It's not just him. If we just keep focusing on George Gascon, the Jennifer Shapers and the Deborah San Juans and everybody else that they have intricately planted in the system to release all of these black and brown criminals into the black and brown community. They're not releasing them because they care about about the black and brown people. They know that they're going to come out and re-victimize more black and brown people. Why are there no halfway houses in Malibu? There's no halfway houses in Calabasas. There's no halfway houses in Newport. There's no halfway houses in Naples. And that's strategic. They know exactly what they're doing. But at the end of the day, you don't get to place the value on my murdered kids. Those are my kids. So when I had to sit up there and go to parole process by myself, they didn't allow the district attorney's office to go with me. We got all these people that murdered my son. How in the hell am I going to know the role they played in his murder unless I pull his murder file? Now I'm pulling the murder file, studying my son's case, and I seen the murder pictures that I had never seen before. So at the end of the day, now I got to play the prosecutor's role in the parole process. But it didn't even matter because they already had their mind made up. He was under the age of 26. And if we don't start looking at the big picture, we're going to be here every fucking week.
Right.
It's a system. And when you start taking out Gascon, you got to make it be a domino effect. Jennifer Schaefer, Deborah San Juan. At the end of the day, they don't care about our kids. They told me to my face that they did not feel like that my son's killers should be punished. They should be rehabilitated. And I told them to their face, you don't get to tell me nothing about mine. And I'm going to fight like a mom until I don't have to. And the only way I ain't going to have to is they do their job. It's called a justice system. That means that justice is a system that's supposed to work for us, not for the criminals.
Thank you.
But every time I go before somebody that has a little status, because I ain't going to say they have power, because God is all power. They got status, they got titles, they got positions, but God is good because I fought my ass off for 3.5 months. I made it to the governor's office and they reversed the parole decision and my son's killer will not get out of prison. But that should not have been my fight by myself.
No.
It should have been the justice system fighting for me, and I should have had a community rallying around me the way they do George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. We got George Floyd right here in the neighborhood. We got Breonna Taylor right here in the neighborhood. But they'll sit out there and pour into the streets for everybody else, but they'll watch me fight by myself. But that's okay, I'm enough. That's my son.
You're not alone.
That's my son.
Not alone anymore.
That's my
Not anymore.
son. Then I have another son who was murdered April the 2nd, 2012 on his 24th birthday, on my first day of murder trial for my other son. So what do California want me to do? Fight all my life? They keep coming up for parole. They keep coming up. There are 11 people charged with my kids' murders. And every time I look up, somebody wants out of jail. But until George Gascon came, nobody wasn't looking at me. They wasn't thinking about my kid. So when they try to use my pain for their political gain, I shut them down. That's my son. If you want to talk about George Gascon, you're going to have to talk about Marquise LeBlanc.
Yes.
You ain't going to just talk about George Gascon without talking about my baby, because I'm going to show you my back and keep it pushing. I ain't here to play games. I'm here to apply pressure. The state of California needs pressure applied. There are laws and policies and directives in place that we don't even know about, that sometimes we even sign up for. They're going to release all these people. If I wouldn't have never showed up at that parole process, I wouldn't have known how the system really works. It's not just George Gascon. It's a whole system. And if we don't stand up and we don't start to fight collectively, we're going to be doing this over and over and over and over again. Our kids are victims. They are victims, not the offenders. And like I said, I would drag the whole state of California and everybody in it like a search and rescue team on the Mississippi River. You're not going to just murder my kid and I'm going to just watch you walk out the gates. It's not going to happen. But I can't do it by myself. This is a community, and the community has to stick together. There's no way that we should have to only come when somebody is murdered. We should be fighting the system, period.
Together.
Because at the end of the day, like I said, there's no halfway houses in Calabasas. There's none in Naples. There's none in Newport Beach. They don't care about our kids. They got their kids tucked away, safe. They don't got to go to school with these killers. They don't got to go to Walmart meet the killers. They don't got to see them at the gas station. Those are only our kids that get stuck in the system and they watch them re-victimize us over and over. George Gascon is demonic. but he has an agenda. And in order for the agenda to come to fruition, he has to have a team and a system. And if we don't be just as powerful as their system, we're going to do this every other fucking month.
Yeah.
We're going to have to do it. Nobody wants to fight until it's their kid. But at the end of the day, you get in by choice. You get in by choice, or you're going to get in by force. Because sooner or later, some kind of way, the victim is going to come to your door. You're going to have to experience something that we've experienced. There's no way that mothers should have to come here and cry out for justice. Justice should be given to us. I shouldn't have to go after justice. Justice should have to come after me. George Gascon, Jennifer Schaefer, Deborah San Juan, I'm with you. I'm coming for you. And I'm going to do it in a way that the same way you did it to me. The same way you re-victimized my son, the same way you told me that my son's life mattered nothing. You don't get to tell me the value of my murdered kid. You don't get to tell me the value of my broken heart. You don't get to tell me the value of my kids' siblings. You don't get to place the value on us. You're not qualified to do it. And if we don't come together and be as strong as we are hurt, eventually we're going to lose out. It's a system, and we need to figure out who is planted in the system and come for every single one of them. My other son's name was Marqueon Taylor, and Marquise LeBlanc was the one murdered by all those racists. And at the end of the day, I'm a mother. That's my son. I don't have a choice but to fight, but I don't want to fight by myself. Thank you, everybody. I love my kids. I'm going to fight like a mom until I don't have to. And if anybody needs me, I'm only a phone call away.
Amen.
Right here, I think. There it is. Yeah. Where is Ruby Alvarado? Where is she? There you go. Here's your mic.
Good afternoon, everyone. Wow. My daughter, this is my granddaughter, Ruby Alvarado. She's 7 years old. It's been about 2 months that we don't know where my granddaughter is. I reported it to DCFS, Minors Council, and I am not getting the help, guys. That is why I'm out here. Her father, 8 years ago, Orlando Alvarado, was part of my daughter Zyla Aguirre's rape. Orlando put my daughter in a room to be raped by multiple men 8 years ago. Now, it's me fighting the system with my granddaughter because we don't know where she is. My granddaughter was taken out of the country last year with the excuse of the pandemic. She was taken to Tijuana. I have no family members in Tijuana. I told my daughter, something's not right. Why are you not being allowed to see your child? My daughter got a hold of the sister, Susana Alvarado, or Susana got a hold of my daughter, stating that if she wanted to see her daughter, she would have to cross the border to see her daughter. My daughter, Zyla, took the Greyhound to Tijuana with no address, with no family members to help us on that side. Somehow my daughter got Ruby across the border back to LA. And she said, Mom, Susana says that you could see Ruby, but you would have to come to LA to pick her up. And I did. I was so anxious to see Ruby because I knew something wasn't right. I brought her back to Bakersfield, California with me and my husband. Ruby started opening up, saying that her father, I don't know if he was using the tablet or a phone, and was not allowing her to talk to my daughter Zyla. A few days passed and I was calling Minors Council letting them know why was Ruby Alvarado in Bakersfield, California? Where is the father? Why was she taken out of the country without my daughter known or anybody known? It's hard, guys. It's hard. My granddaughter started opening the few days that she was in Bakersfield. She didn't have her eye prescription glasses. So I was more worried. I wasn't even thinking of anything else, just to try to feed her, because I know she wasn't being fed right. Ruby said, Grandma, my Aunt Susana Alvarado's wasn't being nice to me. I said, why are you saying that? Because I didn't even have a toy to play with, or I didn't even have clothes that I could change. So that's when I took the initiative of asking her, Ruby, were you able to open up the refrigerator when you were hungry and grab something? She said no. So I was letting minor counsel know everything that Ruby was letting me know. So if the secretary related that information to him or not, I don't know, but I called him. It was almost 15 days that she was in Bakersfield, guys. We were in the kitchen. She was sitting next to her younger sibling, Juliet. Her tone of voice changed, guys. She said, Grandma, I have something to tell you, but I'm very scared. That caught my attention, guys. Really caught my attention. Something made me grab my phone, and I said, I need to record this. What I thought it was that somebody probably had touched my granddaughter when she said that she was scared. What happened was that she said that she couldn't feel her legs nor her arms. She said that she felt that she was dying. What would make a 7-year-old say that? That she couldn't feel her legs nor her arms, and that she felt that she was dying. Guys, as soon as she told me that, I was able to record it. I put it on YouTube and I put it on my Facebook so the world could hear this. I let DCFS know. I called law enforcement, and I didn't see any help for Ruby. I didn't see any help for my granddaughter. I need your help, guys. I thought I could do this alone, but I can't do it. I need an army. I need the patriots out there. I can't do this alone.
We're gonna find Ruby.
We don't know where she is. I've hired investigator after investigator. I should not have to be doing DCFS job. Why am I doing their job? Something is wrong for a child to say, I can't feel my legs nor my arms. I feel that I'm dying.
No, oh my God.
Why? When the cops came to my house and they took Ruby, Ruby said, Grandma, can I please take your peanut butter jar? Why would a child say that? Unless it's self-defense mechanism. Because she didn't know if she was going to be fed. Am I right, guys? Or am I wrong?
No, you're right, Araceli.
I can't do it. I need your help, guys, to find my granddaughter and get her back to safe haven, my house. Thank you, guys.